Hello, this is Coach Mitch here with the lesson on chess tactics and calculations. Welcome. You can win a lot of games just by capturing free pieces and also not by hanging your own pieces. But to take your play to the next level and to gain rating points, you have to start looking a little bit deeper into the position. I don't mean you have to look ahead like 10 moves all the time. Even world chess champion Magnus Carlsen usually doesn't do that. No, even for grandmasters, looking just a few moves ahead is good enough most of the time. Now, this lesson will help you look just 1.5 moves ahead. My move, your move, and then my move. A cool tool called takes, KAPOW. This tool is related to check, escape, KAPOW, which we'll do in a future lesson. There's even some overlap, which you'll see. Okay, here's the first example. So let's look at this position. It's black to play. This is black here in this game is Garry Kasparov. It's from 1995, and there's a lot going on in this position. The bishop is sort of attacking the king. There's a pawn in the way. There are possible trades here. It's hard to see. But if you say, hey, let's look at some captures. Well, taking the pawn's not that great. But if you play rook takes rook, and then he plays rook takes rook back, so black takes, white takes, in that position with black to play, there's the kapow. Do you see it? I think you do, so let's do it. Oops. So black plays, I gotta do it, oy vey. I have it right now. So black plays rook takes rook, check. It's a check, so this is also a checks escape kapow. Takes, and the kapow is pawn there. Check. And you know what? That's going to be checkmate pretty soon. The only thing white can do is block, and then this is checkmate. Very nice. So let's go to the next one. This is also black to play. Oi, I don't know what to do here. Well, let's look at all the captures. There's rook takes rook check. I don't see what he gains. But if you take this way, now if white doesn't take, if he doesn't recapture, black is just going to be a piece up. And that's pretty much enough to win the game. So he takes, and do you see the kapow? Right, queen here, checkmate. Now let's go back. Let's see if you can see it without me moving the pieces. Bishop takes knight check, rook takes bishop. You're forcing white's move. Checks and captures are forcing moves. And do you see what black can do in that position after bishop takes knight, rook takes bishop? Yeah, and in that position, there's queen h1, checkmate. Let's do it again. Very nice. Let's do the next one. Okay, this is white to play. Oy vey. There's so many possible things going on. Oh, knight takes bishop. Oh, but then this queen takes rook. There's also knight takes knight. Oy vey. I don't know what's going on. So the key is this knight's guarding things, the queen is guarding things. The queen is attacking this rook. But if you play bishop takes knight, well, you're protecting everything. He can't take the rook or the knight, the bishop protects. And if he takes the bishop now, so he doesn't fall down a piece, then what does white have? Where's the kapow? Right, knight takes bishop, check. And then the knight is giving check and attacking the queen. Let's see that. Takes, takes. Let's see, you can see the kapow now. Kapow. Good game. Let's do the next one. Okay, this is a little tricky. There's knight takes knight. There's bishop takes knight. Bishop takes pawn, but that doesn't really make much sense because it's so easily defended. Now this rook is not protected. And this knight is attacked once, defended once. So again, loose pieces drop off. So it's based on the fact that this rook is not protected and this knight is just barely defended adequately. One attacker, one defender. So what you do is you play bishop takes knight. Let's put it back. Rook takes bishop. And now both rooks are not defended. Loose pieces drop off. There's a fork. Do you see it? Queen to d5 attacks both. Let's see if I get this right. Queen to d5 will attack this rook and that rook. So let's see how it works out. Bishop takes knight, takes, kapow with a queen fork, and he's going to win a rook. Let's do the next one. Okay, this is white to play. Do you see a take, a capture, a recapture, and then a kapow? This is a little easy. So you just take the bishop, and when he takes your queen, where's the kapow? Bishop takes queen, because the pawn is not there anymore. Let's see if I do it right. So let's see it in real life. Queen takes bishop, pawn takes queen, and now bishop takes queen. And you've given up a queen, but you want a queen and a bishop, so you want a bishop. In this position, white is now up a rook, and this should be a very easy win. Okay, so this is a Bobby Fischer game. I have to get to this position. So it is black to play. Now black, if he takes the knight, the rook will take, and I don't see any kapow. And if he takes the rook can take. And I don't see any kapow. Well, actually, maybe there is one. So who sees the kapow after queen takes rook, rook takes queen? Who sees the kapow after queen takes rook, rook takes queen? I'll get rid of the arrows. Okay, there's rook to d1, which will lead to checkmate. Let's show it in action. Queen takes rook. It's not a rook takes queen, otherwise you're just down a rook. And then the kapow. He can block for a move, but he's going to get checkmated. Okay, let's do the next one. This is a Kasparov game. Garry Kasparov, he was world champion years ago, from 1985 to 2000, possibly the best player of all time. He is black in this position. Very complicated. This knight is pinned to the queen, to the king, actually, I should say. And it's attacked twice, defended twice. But you don't want your pieces defending. Everything else seems defended. You can't take the rook because the knight protects. Just look for captures. What happens on rook takes bishop check? King takes rook. So if he plays rook takes bishop check, the king will take. And that's not a great trade. But maybe there's a kapow in that position. Do you see a kapow? I'll set this up. Takes, and there's a kapow here. Checkmate. Kapow. Black wins. This knight is doing a great job taking away that escape square. Let's do another one. Oi, what's happening here? This is a Bobby Fischer game. Material looks equal. This rook can take the bishop, but the rook takes bishop, but then the rook takes back. But in that position, there's a kapow. So you have to imagine the position after rook takes bishop, rook takes rook, and look for the kapow. Let's put it back. And let's see if you can see that. I'll get rid of the arrows. Look for the checks in that position. Yeah, the queen's checking. The queen will go to e1, give check. The queen not only checks the king, but it's attacking the rook. Remember, it's not a bishop now because of the takes, and he'll win a bishop. Let's see it in real life. Rook takes rook, that's a takes. If he doesn't take back, he's down a bishop, and guess what? If you're playing Bobby Fischer and you're down a bishop, you're going to lose. So he has to take, and then the kapow. When the king gets out of check, well, you know what? Maybe there's a checkmate here, but you know what? Just take the rook, and the guy will give up anyway. Just a couple more. So let's look at this position. Black has a lot of pieces around the white king. White has a lot of pieces defending, but remember, pieces tend to be more clumsy when they're defending. Chess pieces like to attack. They don't really like to defend. They just get in each other's way. Now, there's a beautiful checkmate, I think, in just a couple of moves, if Black sees a takes, kapow. And here's a hint. It's also a check, escape, kapow. Well, if the knight gives check, I can just take it off. I don't see anything. This knight protects the pawn. Otherwise, it would be checkmate. After bishop takes knight, this would be checkmate, except the knight will take. Remember, there's a bishop here protecting the queen. So let's go back. Well, let's do it the other way around. If you play queen takes pawn check, and then knight takes queen, there's a kapow in that position. I'll give you a hint. It's checkmate in one move. Let's see. Queen takes pawn check. Knight takes queen. And do you see the checkmate? Knight to g4 is checkmate. The knights work together to take away all these squares. The other pieces smother the king. That's really cool. I wish I knew what that game was. Let's go back and let's see if you can picture it in this position. Queen takes pawn check. Remember, checks are the most forcing moves. They really limit what your opponent can do. He must escape from check. Knight takes queen is the only move. I'll just put one arrow there and then another. Take them off. And then in that position, do you see the checkmate? You have to picture queen takes pawn check, knight takes queen, and I'm hoping you can see knight g4 check. I'll do it one more time, and then that'll be it. It's a great tool, this takes kapow. Okay, this will be the last one. It is white to play in this position. Now, knight f7 check is it's not check, I'm sorry. It's a great move, but it's not check. And so even though you're forking two things, you're forking the queen and the rook, it's not check. So Black can escape the fork by playing queen check. And then when he gets out of check, no matter what he does, it doesn't really make a difference. That's not a good move. Then you just take the knight. Let's do this right. And then you just take the knight. So let's go back. So knight f7 is a great move, but because it's not check, it's not forcing enough. But if you can play queen takes rook check, that looks pretty stupid, silly. You're giving up a queen for a rook, but he must take back king takes knight, king takes queen. Boy, I messed that up. King takes rook, king takes queen, and in that position, there's a kapow. So let's see if you can imagine it. Queen h6 check, king takes queen, and then do you see the kapow? Well, in that position, knight f7 is a check, so you're checking the king. Remember, the rook here is now a king, and you're attacking the queen, a really cool fork. And you're just going to, you turn out you're winning a rook. So in that position, the correct move is takes, and this is the kapow. And you're up a rook, and this should be an easy win. So I hope you learned from this lesson. In a future lesson, we'll do check, escape, KAPOW. Thank you very much. Hope to see you soon.